It started like any other evening. I walked into the house, the faint scent of Christmas filling the air. My wife, Clara, was curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, flipping through a magazine. Mia, my 16-year-old stepdaughter, had her head buried in her phone. The small artificial tree in the corner blinked its colorful lights, and the holiday decorations dotted the room, creating the illusion of warmth and joy. But the stillness in the air felt different tonight. I'd just come back from the office, another long day of meetings, phone calls, and paperwork. It was supposed to be a quiet evening at home, nothing extraordinary. But it was my birthday, and somehow it already felt like I'd missed the mark. As I set my coat down, I saw Mia get up, holding something in her hands. She came toward me, looking more hesitant than usual. Her eyes flickered between me and the gift she was holding. Something small and wrapped in crinkly paper. "Happy early birthday, Dad," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. I was taken aback. Mia wasn't exactly the type to get excited about these things. In the years we'd been together, she'd always been distant, polite, but distant. I gave her a small smile and took the gift from her, trying not to let my confusion show. "Thanks, Mia." "You didn't have to," I said, unwrapping the gift. Inside, I found a pair of sleek, high-end wireless earbuds. The kind I'd seen in stores, but never actually bought for myself. I was surprised, but it wasn't just the gift that got my attention. It was a look on her face, nervous, almost guilty. "They're great," I said, trying to keep things light. "You know, I've been wanting something like this." Her eyes didn't meet mine as she stepped back. "I thought you'd like them." I wanted to say more, to ask her what was going on, but the words wouldn't come. Something about the way she stood there, so anxious, made me hesitate. "Thanks, kiddo," I added, but Mia was already turning to head back upstairs. I stood there for a moment, holding the earbuds, but my mind wasn't focused on the gift. It was on Mia, the way she'd handed it to me like she was offering a peace treaty. What was going on in her head? And why did Clara seem so distant lately? Clara's sudden change in attitude. She looks up from her magazine, her face tight. "We need to talk, Tom." Her words are calm, but the tension in her tone makes it clear this isn't a simple conversation. I didn't say anything at first. I had a feeling I already knew what this was about, but I wasn't ready to face it. I set the earbuds down on the kitchen counter and walked toward Clara, my stomach already in knots. "About what?" I asked, my voice guarded. Clara put the magazine down slowly, her lips pressed together. "About Mia and Christmas." Her words cut through the room like a knife. "She's going to spend Christmas with Rick." I froze. My heart dropped to my stomach. "What do you mean, spend Christmas with Rick?" I asked, trying to process the words. "Mia needs a real father," Clara said, her voice chillingly flat. "And I think it's time she gets to have a real Christmas for once." My chest tightened as Clara's words hit me like a slap. This wasn't just about spending time with Mia's biological father. It was about something deeper, something I wasn't prepared for. I had been here for every school meeting, every doctor's appointment, every birthday. Yet Clara was telling me I wasn't enough. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words caught in my throat. There was nothing I could say to change it. "Mia's not asking for a stepdad," Clara continued, her voice cold and detached. "She's asking for Rick." I stood there, stunned. This wasn't the conversation I expected. I didn't know how to respond, so I just stood there, letting the silence stretch between us. The way her words pressed down on me like an anchor, drowning everything else out. "Clara, we made plans," I said finally, my voice tight. "We have family traditions, and I thought we were going to spend Christmas together." She shook her head. "We have habits, Tom, not plans. And Mia deserves something more than this." She waved her hand dismissively around the room. I felt my chest tighten, a cold knot forming in my gut. Where do I fit in? I asked quietly, but the words hung in the air like they didn't belong. Clara didn't answer me. She just stared at me with an unreadable expression before finally speaking again. "I'm taking her to Rick's cabin. If you don't like it, then you can file for divorce." "But we're going." The shock wasn't just in her words. It was in the utter calmness with which she said them. The decision had already been made. The reality hit me like a ton of bricks. My wife, the woman I had shared years of my life with, was giving me an ultimatum. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't even raise my voice. I just turned away from her, my mind spinning, and walked to the kitchen table. I pulled my laptop toward me, opened it up, and clicked on the email I'd been avoiding for months. The one from Tokyo. A job offer. I had turned it down 3 times already because of Clara's reluctance to leave Iowa. But now, with this conversation hanging over me, it felt like the only escape. Without a second thought, I typed the words I have been afraid to say for years. If the position is still available, I'd like to accept. I hit send. The email whooshed away, leaving me with an emptiness I couldn't explain. As the email went out, I glanced at the door. For the first time in years, I wasn't sure if I was still part of this family. The cold click of the laptop closing echoed in the silent room, and the weight of my decision pressed down on me like never before. The morning of my 57th birthday was anything but celebratory. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen, but it couldn't mask the tension that had settled between Clara and me. I made my usual breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, but the routine felt hollow. Clara barely acknowledged me, absorbed in her phone. Mia was still upstairs, likely in her room, where she'd spent most of the morning. I knew it wasn't just a birthday that had created this distance between us, but I didn't know how to bridge the gap. "Happy birthday, Tom," Clara said, her voice distant. It was the first time she'd spoken to me that day, and it barely registered as she shuffled around the kitchen. "Thanks," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Anything planned for later?" Clara looked up at me, a flicker of something passing through her eyes. I could see the thoughts in her mind, but she didn't voice them. Instead, she mumbled, "I have a few things to do today. Maybe later." I nodded, though I couldn't help feeling the weight of her words hanging in the air. Later never came. I spent most of the morning lost in my own thoughts, trying to process the conversation from the night before. I kept going over it, each time feeling a little more numb, a little more detached. This wasn't just about Christmas. It wasn't just about Mia and Rick. It was about something bigger. It was about a family, my family, unraveling in front of me. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't fix it. By mid-afternoon, Clara had disappeared into the garage to take care of some things, which left me with the silence of the house. Mia hadn't come downstairs since breakfast. I didn't know where she went after handing me the earbuds the night before. The idea that something was off with her, something I couldn't put my finger on, kept nagging at me. I decided to check in on her. I knocked softly on her bedroom door, then opened it without waiting for an answer. Mia was sitting on the bed, her phone in her hand, staring at the screen like it held all the answers. She barely acknowledged me when I entered. "Hey, Mia," I said, sitting down next to her. "How are you doing?" She didn't answer right away, which only made the silence feel heavier. "I'm fine, Dad," she said quietly, her voice a little too controlled. I watched her, trying to gauge if she was being honest with me. "You don't seem fine," I said gently. "We can talk if you want. About Christmas or whatever else is bothering you." Mia shifted on the bed, clearly uncomfortable. She didn't look at me, but her fingers moved nervously on her phone screen. Finally, she sighed and looked up at me, her face a mix of frustration and confusion. "I didn't want this, you know? I didn't want you to feel like I'm choosing Rick over you." I stared at her, shocked. I hadn't expected this conversation to come from her. "Mia, you don't have to choose anyone. I'm not asking you to. But you're hurt, aren't you?" she asked, her voice softening. I can see it. The words hit harder than I anticipated. She wasn't just talking about the Christmas situation. She was talking about everything. The distance, the disconnect, all of it. She was aware of it, maybe more aware than I was willing to admit. I swallowed hard, feeling a lump in my throat. "I'm not angry with you, Mia. I just don't know what's happening anymore. I thought we had something. I thought we were building something together." She looked away, her eyes downcast. "I never wanted to hurt you, Dad." My heart broke a little. This wasn't her fault, and I had to remind myself of that. I reached out and put my hand on hers. We'll figure this out. Whatever happens with Christmas, we'll talk through it. But just know I'm always here for you." For a moment, she seemed to relax, the tension in her body easing. But it was only for a second. She pulled her hand back and turned her attention back to her phone. I could tell she was shutting down again, retreating into herself. I got up slowly, unsure what to say next. "I'll leave you to it," I said, and walked out of her room, the door clicking softly behind me. I couldn't help but feel like I was losing her, piece by piece, and I didn't know how to stop it. The sound of a doorbell rings through the house, pulling me out of my spiraling thoughts. I walk to the door and freeze as soon as I see the figure standing outside, a police officer. I stare at the officer, who stood there with clipboard in hand, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows on the porch. My heart raced, a sense of dread creeping into my chest. The words that came out of his mouth didn't make sense at first. "Mr. Halverson, we need to speak with you about your stepdaughter." I blinked, momentarily speechless. "What about Mia?" I asked, my voice tight. The officer hesitated before responding. "We need to bring her in for questioning. It's related to an ongoing investigation." The words felt like a punch in the gut. "What kind of investigation?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Just some questions, sir. We'll need your consent to speak with her further," the officer said, his tone formal but not unkind. My mind raced. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Not now. The emotional distance, the tension with Clara, Mia's strange behavior, all felt like too much to handle. But this was something else entirely. I felt a knot form in my stomach. "Of course you can speak with her," I said, my voice shaky. "Where is she?" "She's waiting in the car, sir. Please come with me." I nodded, unable to speak. The officer turned and walked toward the squad car parked at the curb, and I followed him in a daze. My thoughts were swirling, too fast for me to process, and I felt like I was walking through a fog. Mia was sitting in the back of the car, her head down, her eyes avoiding mine. Her shoulders were hunched, and her posture was so defeated it made my heart ache. This wasn't the girl I knew. This wasn't my stepdaughter. "Mia," I said softly, approaching the car. She didn't respond, didn't even look at me. I opened the door, leaning in. "Mia, what's going on?" I asked, trying to make sense of everything. She didn't look at me, but her voice trembled as she whispered, "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Just as I was about to ask her more, the officer stepped forward, his expression grim. "Sir, we need to get going. Please step back." The ride to the station was quiet. Mia's silence spoke volumes, but I couldn't get a single word out of her. She sat there, staring out the window, her face pale. I kept glancing at her, hoping for some sign that she'd explain herself, that she would tell me what was really going on. But nothing came. We arrived at the station, and I was directed into a small, sterile room. Mia was escorted to a separate area for questioning. I sat down, my hands clenched tightly together, waiting for the inevitable. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. This wasn't supposed to be my life. This wasn't how I imagined spending my 57th birthday. Minutes dragged by, each one stretching longer than the last. Finally, the door opened and a detective walked in. He introduced himself, but his name didn't matter. I wasn't here for introductions. I was here to find out what had happened to my family, to my stepdaughter. "Mia has been involved with some dangerous people," the detective said, sitting across from me. His voice was calm, too calm. I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean by dangerous people?" I asked, trying to keep the panic from creeping into my voice. "We've been tracking an underground operation, and Mia's name came up in connection with it." The words were too much to take in all at once. My mind was spinning. What kind of operation? The detective leaned in, his gaze serious. "Drug trafficking. Mia has been in contact with some individuals linked to it." The shock hit me like a freight train. The girl I'd raised, the one I'd cared for like my own daughter, was involved in something this serious? "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "This can't be true." The detective looked at me, then back at the door. I'm afraid it's more than just a misunderstanding, Mr. Halverson. We need to take action. With each word, the weight of the situation grew heavier. What had happened to Mia? How had she gotten involved with people like this? And why hadn't I seen it coming? The truth was out there, but it was darker than I could have imagined. I spent the rest of the day at the police station, pacing the cold, fluorescent-lit hallways, while Mia was questioned in another room. The detective had left me with more questions than answers. Drug trafficking. My stepdaughter. How had we gotten here? And more importantly, how had I missed it? By the time I left the station, it was dark. My phone buzzed several times, but I couldn't bring myself to check it. I felt a growing sense of disconnect, like my whole life had suddenly been turned upside down. The simple rhythms of our family, the routine I'd clung to for years, were now shattered. When I got home, the house felt colder than it had all day. Clara wasn't there. I didn't expect her to be. I didn't know what I expected anymore. The house felt empty, even though I could hear the distance of the fridge and the soft creak of the house settling. The weight of it all pressed on me. Mia, Clara, the betrayal I felt, the guilt I carried for not seeing what was right in front of me. I walked into the living room, past the tree that still flickered with colored lights, past the stockings hung with care. Everything looked so normal, so unchanged, yet everything had changed. I couldn't even escape the holiday cheer. The reminders of what was supposed to be a joyful time now felt like a cruel joke. I glanced at the phone again. There were several missed calls from Clara, a text, and then a voicemail. I opened the voicemail first, my stomach tightening as I pressed play. "Tom," Clara's voice crackled through the speaker. "We need to talk. I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do, but I think I've made a huge mistake. I need you to come home. Please come home." I stood there for a moment, the phone still pressed to my ear, trying to process what she had said. I wanted to be angry, to demand answers. But the truth was, I didn't even know what I was feeling anymore. The love I thought we shared, the trust, it all seemed like it had been an illusion. I deleted the voicemail without responding. I couldn't deal with her right now, not after everything that had happened with Mia. I had no idea where things stood with Clara, and if I'm honest, I wasn't sure I cared. Mia still hadn't called or texted me. I thought about reaching out, but I wasn't sure what I could say. How do you talk to a girl who was suddenly a stranger? A girl who had gotten herself tangled in something that could tear our lives apart? I sat down on the couch, letting my thoughts race. And that's when my phone buzzed again. A text from Mia. I opened it slowly, praying it was a sign she was ready to talk. The message was short. "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't want this to happen." My fingers hovered over the screen. What was I supposed to say? I didn't want this either? Or maybe, "I'm here for you no matter what"? The truth was, I didn't know how to reach her anymore. The next morning, I didn't hear from Clara. No calls, no texts. I didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. As much as I hated to admit it, a part of me welcomed the silence. I needed space to think, to process the mess I found myself in. Mia's message from last night still lingered in my mind. I didn't want to push her too hard, but I couldn't just sit back and pretend everything was fine. She needed me, and I needed to make sure she understood that. I spent the morning at the office, mostly going through the motions. My head wasn't in it, though. The thought of Mia, sitting somewhere, perhaps waiting for me to fix this, gnawed at me. I kept checking my phone, hoping for another message, another sign that she was ready to reach out. Finally, at lunch, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I texted her, "I'm here whenever you're ready to talk. I don't care about what happened. I care about you." I stared at the screen, watching the three dots appear and disappear as Mia typed back. When the reply came, it wasn't what I expected. "I can't do this, Dad. I don't want you to be disappointed in me." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Disappointed in her? I had never once felt that way. But the word stung. Was this her attempt to protect me from the truth? Or was she really this lost, this terrified? Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was a detective. My stomach dropped. "Mr. Halverson," he said when I picked up, "we've uncovered something serious. We need to talk about Mia's involvement. The detective went on to explain that they had traced Mia's communication with certain individuals linked to a larger operation. My heart sank as I listened. This wasn't just some teenage rebellion. It was something darker, something that could ruin her life forever. "Do you have any idea how deep this goes?" the detective asked. "Because we need to move fast." I couldn't breathe. My mind raced, trying to piece together what Mia had gotten herself into. How had she become so involved in something like this? The Mia I knew was quiet, reserved. She wasn't a criminal. I stammered. "I don't know." I had no idea. The detective's next words hit me like a thunderclap. "We believe Mia may have been used to transport goods. We need you to come in for a statement." I hung up the phone, the weight of the words sinking in. My daughter, my stepdaughter, was mixed up in something I couldn't even begin to understand. How had this all happened under my nose? The police station was colder than I remembered. I sat in a small waiting area, my hands clasped tightly together, trying to steady my nerves. My thoughts raced. How had Mia fallen so far? Was this my fault? Had I missed the signs? I wasn't sure how long I waited before the detective called me into his office. I stood up and followed him, feeling a cold sweat break out on my skin. This wasn't a normal visit. This wasn't about handling a routine situation. This was about my daughter, and I had no idea how to fix this. "Mia's been in contact with a lot of people," the detective said as I sat down across from him. "Some of them have serious criminal ties. We need to know how involved she is and what she might know." My mind was racing. "What kind of people?" I asked, barely able to form the words. "Organized crime," the detective replied bluntly. "Drug trafficking, money laundering." I felt like the room was spinning. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. This wasn't the girl I had raised. This wasn't the Mia who'd given me earbuds for my birthday just days ago. "Do you have any idea who she's been talking to?" the detective asked, his voice more urgent now. I don't know," I stuttered, feeling the guilt and helplessness weigh me down. "She's been quiet. She hasn't been herself lately." But I didn't think it was anything this serious. The detective leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Mia might be in danger, Mr. Halverson, and if she's been used by these people, she's not the only one at risk." The words hit me like a slap to the face. My daughter, she wasn't just making bad decisions. She was caught in something dangerous, and I had no idea how to save her. The detective leaned back in his chair. "We're going to need your help, Mr. Halverson. We need to find out everything Mia knows before it's too late." I didn't know how much more I could take. Every minute that passed felt like a step closer to losing Mia. How had it come to this? The waiting was unbearable. I spent hours in my apartment, staring out the window at the city below, watching the people hurry by, unaware of the storm swirling in my life. My phone buzzed constantly, but I couldn't bring myself to check it. Clara hadn't called since the day at the police station. Mia hadn't reached out either, and I was starting to wonder if I had done something wrong. I hadn't heard from the detective all day, but around 4 p.m., my phone rang. It was him, Mr. Halverson. The detective began, his tone grim. "We've uncovered some disturbing information. I need you to come down here immediately." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it? Is Mia okay?" There was a long pause before he answered. "She's not in danger, but she's involved with a group that we've been tracking for months. These people are dangerous, and Mia's been used to transport illicit goods." My stomach dropped. This was worse than I had imagined. "Used?" I asked, feeling my voice crack. "They've been manipulating her, using her to move shipments. She doesn't fully understand the consequences, but we have evidence that connects her to some of their activities." I felt the world spin as I tried to process what he was saying. Mia, my sweet stepdaughter, the girl who had spent hours helping me with the house and asking about my day, was involved with criminals. How had I missed it? "I'll be right there," I said, my voice low. When I arrived at the police station, the detective was waiting for me in the same small room. I could tell by the look on his face that this wasn't going to be easy. "Mia's been cooperating," the detective said as I sat down across from him. "But she's scared, and she's not telling us everything. We need you to help us get through to her." My chest tightened. What else aren't you telling me? We found out that Mia wasn't just moving goods. She was being groomed to take on a larger role. These people had plans for her, and if we don't act soon, she might be sucked even deeper into their web. I felt the weight of those words settle over me like a heavy blanket. I had no idea how much danger Mia had been in all this time. I had thought I was protecting her, but I had failed. As I sat there in stunned silence, the detective's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. "We need to act now," he said, standing up abruptly. They just moved something through her, something big. My mind raced. What had Mia gotten herself into? And what had I missed? The weight of this was overwhelming. I didn't know how I could make this right, but I knew one thing. I had to protect Mia at all costs. The drive home felt like a blur. The world outside my window was a blur of motion, but inside, all I could hear was the sound of my own thoughts, spiraling out of control. The detective had given me little comfort. The truth was, Mia was in deeper than I had realized, and no matter how much I wanted to protect her, the reality was harsh. When I arrived back at the apartment, I found Clara sitting in the living room, her face drawn and tired. She looked up at me as I entered, but didn't say anything at first. She knew. "How bad is it?" she finally asked, her voice strained. I walked over to the couch and sat down, rubbing my eyes. "It's worse than I thought. Mia's involved with a dangerous group. They've been using her to transport goods." Clara's face drained of color. "No, that can't be right. I wish it wasn't. But the police have proof. She's been manipulated. Clara, she didn't know what she was getting into. But it's too late for just ignoring it." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes as she looked at me. The first time in days I'd seen any emotion from her. Why didn't she tell us? Because she didn't want to disappoint us. She didn't want us to know what she'd done. But we're going to fix this. Clara, we have to. I paused, trying to steady my breath. The detective needs our help. Mia's been used by these people. But if we don't act soon, they'll just keep pulling her deeper into their world. We have to stop it now. Clara nodded slowly, wiping away a tear. She stood up and walked toward the kitchen, but she didn't say anything. For a moment, it seemed like we might finally be on the same page. But then, a knock on the door broke the silence. I opened the door to find the detective standing outside, his expression serious. "We need to talk," he said. "It's worse than we thought." Mia's life was hanging in the balance, and the storm was only just beginning. The next few days passed in a blur. Clara and I worked together to get Mia the help she needed. The detective had connected us with a crisis counselor who would work with Mia to help her process what had happened. It was clear that Mia wasn't the mastermind behind any of this. She was a victim, manipulated and coerced by people who saw her as nothing more than a pawn in their game. The detective kept us updated, and we did everything we could to support Mia. I never once left her side during those days. She needed someone to show her she wasn't alone in this, and I needed to make sure that she understood I was there for her no matter what. The process was slow. Mia didn't talk much. She stayed mostly in her room, reading, texting her friends, barely acknowledging us. But every now and then, she'd come out and sit with Clara and me in the living room. It wasn't much, but it was a start. One night, as I was sitting at the kitchen table, I heard a soft knock on the door. I opened it, expecting to see the counselor or the detective, but instead it was Mia. She was standing there, her eyes wide, holding something small in her hands. "I made this for you," she said quietly, walking into the room. She handed me a small wooden figure, an image of a man holding a small child's hand. The figure was crude with messy paint on it, but I knew what it was. It was a version of me and her together. I stared at it, feeling a lump form in my throat. "Mia, She shook her head, cutting me off. "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't want to disappoint you." I pulled her into a hug, the weight of everything we'd been through hitting me all at once. "You didn't disappoint me, Mia. You never could." The next morning, I knew things were changing. Mia still had a long way to go, But this was the beginning of something new. I was finally seeing the girl I'd raised, the one who had always been there, buried beneath the fear and the mistakes. I was proud of her. We both were. As we sat down at breakfast, Mia looked at Clara and me with a shy smile. Maybe we can have Christmas together this year? Like we used to. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope that we could be a family again. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. It took a long time to heal, and I'm still a work in progress. I want to ask you guys, have you ever had a moment that felt like an ending but turned out to be a new beginning? Let me know in the comments below if my story resonated with you. I'd be so grateful if you'd give this video a like and subscribe for more stories. It really helps the channel out. See you in the next one.